Okay, let's dive in. When you hear on the news, the markets are up, chances are they're talking about one of two places, the Nasdaq or the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. They're like the twin titans of finance, huge global players.
Total giants. But here's the thing, and what the sources we looked at really highlight, they might seem similar from afar, but they're actually fundamentally different.
They really are. And our mission today, using this material, is basically to unpack what makes them different, and maybe more importantly, why that difference actually matters to you, the listener.
Okay, so where do we begin? Maybe the old guard, the NYSE.
Sounds good. The New York Stock Exchange. Founded, get this, 1792.
Wow, yeah. You immediately picture that, like iconic trading floor, right? Bells ringing, people shouting.
Although it's mostly electronic now, of course.
Yeah.
But that history, that tradition, it's baked right in.
And you see that tradition in the kinds of companies listed there. The sources point to names like Coca-Cola, JP Morgan Chase, Walmart.
Yeah. Exactly. Big, established, blue-chip companies known for stability, often pretty steady performance over time.
Right. The material really emphasizes that. Focus on large-cap companies, generally less day-to-day price swings, less volatility compared to the Nasdaq.
Which tends to appeal more to, say, long-term investors. Maybe people looking for dividends or just, wanting to sleep a bit better at night.
And part of that stability comes from their listing standards, right? The sources mentioned they're quite high.
Definitely. They're stricter. Companies need a solid track record, profitability, size, operating history to even get on the NYSE. It's a tough door to get through.
It filters for those established players. The analogy used in the sources was pretty evocative. The NYSE as a financial cathedral.
Yeah, solid, traditional, a real pillar. I like that.
Okay, so that's the NYSE. Now let's pivot completely. Nasdaq.
Totally different vibe. Founded much later, 1971. And crucially, it was electronic from day one. Never had a physical trading floor.
Born digital. And that seems to define its whole character.
Absolutely. Its focus is much more on innovation, technology, companies really shaping the future. We're talking Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, NVIDIA.
Yeah.
The big tech and biotech names often live here.
So if NYSE is maybe strength, Nasdaq is more about speed, potential growth.
That's a good way to put it. The sources highlight its focus on fast-growing companies. Now, that often means more volatility day to day.
Higher risk, potentially higher reward kind of thing.
Exactly. But that potential for big returns attracts a different crowd, maybe younger investors or just those more comfortable with risk, excited by, AI, EVs, cutting-edge stuff.
And the listing requirements. Easier than NYSE.
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
Especially for younger companies that might not have years of profit but show huge growth potential. Makes sense, right, if you're betting on the future.
Fits the whole Silicon Valley's Wall Street nickname the sources mentioned. Digital, fast, future-focused.
Perfectly put.
Okay, so a question that probably pops up for people listening. Can a company just list on both?
That's a common question. Interestingly, the sources clarify that in the U.S., companies typically pick one. So Apple's on Nasdaq, Coke's on the NYSE. You don't really see domestic dual listing.
But it happens internationally.
Yeah, companies might list on an exchange in their home country and one in the U.S., for example.
Ah.
And this distinction, NYSE versus Nasdaq, it boils down to why it matters for you. Your investment goals, or even just what parts of the economy interest you, might lean one way or the other.
So if you're after, say, stable dividends from established industries, you're watching the NYSE closely.
But if you're really jazzed about the next big thing in tech or biotech, Nasdaq is where the action often is.
Though, realistically, most people keeping an eye on the market watch both, don't they, to get the full picture?
Oh, absolutely. They offer complementary views. NYSE gives you that sense of bedrock strength. Nasdaq gives you the pulse of innovation and speed. You need both for a complete health check of the market.
It shows different sides of the coin, really.
Exactly.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, we've got the NYSE, tradition, stability, strength, the financial cathedral, the Nasdaq, innovation, speed, growth potential, Silicon Valley's Wall Street.
Two powerhouses driving finance in different ways.
Right. But here's a final thought to leave you with, building on what we've discussed. Think beyond just which exchange fits your portfolio. Consider the dynamic between these two very different models, one rooted in history, the other purely digital.
Yeah.
How might their competition, their interplay, continue to shape not just the global economy, but maybe your own financial future in ways we don't even see coming yet? Something to chew on.